Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady. Sorry, Oswald's making silly jokes in the background here. Oh, there's mines on this. I didn't even notice that. Yep, you join me here at Nuka-World. We are here to talk about another interesting story of a person who tried to help their friends and save their lives, but unfortunately didn't make it. So we're talking about Rachel Watkins. So you can hear, there he goes. So that's Oswald the Outrageous, and if you've played Nuka-World, you'll have met him at some point. So Rachel was Oswald's girlfriend, and she was an organic chemistry graduate, which it was a brave undertaking. A lot of people would agree organic chemistry is headache inducing. And she joined the staff of Nuka-World as a way to get her foot in the door to eventually join the Beverageers, which were the people that created the new Coca-Cola flavours and things, and considered to be some of the best organic chemists in the country. So she played the role of Princess Cherry in the King Cola show here at Kiddie Kingdom, which is where we are now. And during her time there, she got close to Oswald. Yeah. So her and Oswald got closer to each other, and eventually they became a couple. Interesting side note, Oswald's real surname is not the Outrageous, it's Oppenheimer. So it's an obvious reference, considering that he is, a glowing one. So kind of an interesting take there. But Rachel obviously worked here at the park with a bunch of others, and she took shelter with the rest of her. Oh, there's a bloodworm. She took shelter with the rest of the employees at Kiddie Kingdom in the employee tunnels that are kind of underneath the park, and they did well together. I mean, you can see that there's walls and turrets and stuff, so they shored up the defences of Kiddie Kingdom and kind of settled there, and were just intending to kind of shelter in place when the bombs fell. Unfortunately, a radiation storm kind of blew into the park and brought fallout to the area. Just going to make sure we're heading in the right general direction. Nope. Yeah. Heading in the right general direction. So she let me try that again. So the radiation storm came into the park, bringing fallout with it, and unfortunately, as we know, radiation makes people unwell, and that's exactly what happened. So a lot of the park employees that were still here were succumbing to radiation sickness, and Rachel kind of fell into the role of a doctor. Although being an organic chemist, there's only so much that she could do, and all she really did was kind of keep people comfortable as they died. And those that didn't die, we know, ended up becoming ghouls. And so you can see Kiddie Kingdom was infested with ghouls. There's the castle in the background there. And they kind of made a life for themselves there as ghouls, fending off the raiders when they arrived, before eventually, sometime fairly recently, they became afflicted, which is what they termed as turning feral. They called it an affliction, believing it to be like a disease or a sickness of some sort. And Rachel tried everything that she could with the resources she had to find a cure. Got nowhere, so she eventually decided to leave the park to find help elsewhere. And it's interesting to note, so on the wiki it states that she left in 2286, which is a year before Fallout 4 is set, which is 2287. But Oswald says that she left years ago, so it's not really that clear exactly when she left Nuka-World. So, we need to kind of take that with a pinch of salt, I think, of knowing how far she potentially travelled and where she ended up going to find the information that she could find. Yep, so we are here in Bradburton, which is the town that was for the park employees, basically, and obviously it's a bit of a mess. So she travelled around and visited a number of towns and settlements to try and find help, and basically learned that she had to just accept that the ghouls just eventually turn feral, and there's not really a lot that could be done about it. And this was just a thing that happened, and there's obviously a few of them kind of wandering around here. So you can find her body here in Bradburton, so I'll show you the map where we are. So we're just right on the kind of eastern edge of Bradburton, which is this town here. And this house that has one wall ripped out and most of its roof gone. And Rachel is here with a gun and her armour and stuff. So she does have a holotape, which is here. So we're going to have a wee listen to that. There we go. So we can hear that she knew that she was turning feral. It definitely seems to be something that they're aware of, that the changes kind of happening to them. And she chose to take matters into her own hands to prevent herself from becoming a feral ghoul. So she chose to end things her own way before the affliction takes her. And if you find this holotape before you confront Oswald at Kiddie Kingdom, it does give you an alternative way of talking him round when you reach that final confrontation. Instead of using the speech check, which is a chance to fail, this holotape will give you a peaceful resolution with Oswald. And yeah, again, it's another one of these kind of tragic stories in the Wasteland, that she tried to do what she could to help her friends, and it definitely feels like there's some kind of found family story with all the employees that were at Kiddie Kingdom when the bombs fell, that they kind of settled in and worked together and lived together, just trying to kind of survive after everything that happened. And we know that, ghouls turning feral, it happens at different rates for different individuals. So some ghouls, it's clear that the change happens really quickly. But for others, they can go, 200 years later and they haven't started going feral yet. And kind of on that point, I do want to talk a bit about the note that's on the wiki page about Rachel here. Somebody's added a note to it. I'm talking about the vials from the TV show, and I do feel like that's a bit of a misinterpretation of the information that we got from the TV show. So the note basically says that, it should be noted that there's these vials, which sort of stave off the fertilisation process, that are used in the TV show, and that kind of proves that she could have found that and things, and it's it doesn't quite make sense, because it says, oh yeah, Roger asks the ghoul how long he's been wastelanding for, and he says a long time, and that's been interpreted as that he's been using the vials for a long time. But Roger says wastelanding, and that's confirmed by the subtitles as well. So he's wastelanding, which means he's been wandering the wastes, and he's been investigating things, and we know from the ending that his main focus is to find out what happened to his wife and his daughter, where they are, what Vault-Tec have done with them, or whatever. That's been the goal that's kept him going. But he says a long time that he's been wastelanding, which doesn't sound like it has anything to do with the vials as such, and more about him being able to earn the caps to buy the vials, or finding things that he can trade for them, like we see he does with Lucy. He takes her to the super duper mart where the drug dealers are, basically, and trades her for a bunch of the vials. So that's kind of what makes sense to my mind, and there's nothing in the TV show that tells us when this drug, like these vials, were actually invented. And it's important to remember that ghoulification and the fertilisation of ghouls, it's a post-war problem. It's not something that was really happening before the bombs fell. It's something that happened after the bombs fell. And also to remember that the TV show does take place 9 years after Fallout 4 in 2296, and on the other side of the country as well. It's set in California and the kind of old NCR territory and that kind of thing. So it's the other side of the country. And if the wiki is correct and she left in 2286, so she only went for a year, the chance of her getting as far as California and getting back in the space of a year is kind of unlikely that she would have got that far in that time frame. And even if it was longer, crossing the entire continental US and the Fallout world is extremely difficult. So again, it would be, I'm not convinced that she would have travelled that far, and it is possible that these vials were maybe invented after that. And potentially news of a cure or a treatment for feral ghouls hadn't reached the East Coast anywhere by 2286, even if the vials were invented before that. So it does kind of track that Rachel never heard of it before she was too far gone to keep searching, and the fact that she's here, she's obviously been kind of on her way back to Kiddie Kingdom, and then things have just got too serious, so that she decided not to push on any further so that she didn't hurt anybody that she cared about. But the vials, we don't know when they were actually created, when they were invented. And we don't know if news of them has spread beyond California at this point. So it really doesn't make any sense that, she would have had a chance to find them, depending on when they were invented. And I do believe that, the long time quote that's mentioned in the note on the wiki is to do with him wandering the wastes and scavenging and taking on, bounties and whatever else he's done. Because he says, oh, I've always been good at making money. So that kind of suggests to me that what he meant was that he's been wandering the wasteland for a long time, and he's developed skills and developed a reputation that allows him to make money to then be able to buy these vials to stave off the fertilisation process. So that's just one thing that I think is worth talking about, because there's a lot of talk about what the TV show has retconned versus not, and this particular issue I don't believe is a retcon. there's certainly a possibility that these things have been invented in between, sort of Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 and that kind of time frame of the game. And also it could be that if they've been invented in the West Coast, that news that this thing exists and is a possibility, it possibly hasn't actually spread to this side of the continent as of yet, and maybe that's something that will happen in the future, who knows. But that aside, I think Rachel's story is really, really interesting. Just another one of these tragic tales with a sad ending. Just people trying to survive in the harshest conditions, and I'm just acquiring more and more feral ghouls outside. Just keep arriving. So, she tried to do everything that she could to save her friends and save herself and Oswald. And I think it's an interesting thing. So if you stumble across this, you would, if this is your first time playing, you stumble across this, you wouldn't have any idea who Rachel is. But then when you speak to Oswald and you're confronting him, having her holotape gives you a peaceful resolution so that there's less bloodshed, which is always a nice option to have, depending on what kind of character you're playing as. So as I say, it's another one of these things where an alternative solution is kind of hidden away, and it's something that you might just discover if you're exploring the Wasteland before you're doing any of the kind of main plot things. So that's quite interesting. So yeah, Rachel sadly didn't make it, didn't manage to find a cure for the affliction. But let me know what you think about all this. Do you think it's something that we might see in the future here, is to, have this cure for being feral ghouls getting back to this side of the country? It's clearly a treatment that has to be taken continually. It's not something that, one dose and bam, no more feral. It's clearly something that it needs to be taken on a regular basis. So it's more a treatment than a cure. Sort of preventative against the changes that cause ghouls to become feral, which we pretty much know that that's due to changes in the brain, whether it's chemical changes in the brain or physical changes in the brain. But the radiation does something to the brain, and that's what causes the ghouls to become feral. And obviously this medication, but if she didn't get as far and she still stayed around kind of Massachusetts and sort of Maine, all the kind of states in this small corner of the East Coast, it depends how far she actually managed to travel with it, and she might not have actually got that far. So it's interesting. And again, another sad story. So let me know what you think, and if there is a particular character or person that you want me to cover next, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to give it a look. But since we're talking about the Nuka-World creatures, I thought it might be interesting to look at a couple of the other little side stories in Nuka-World while we're kind of on that theme for the next couple of weeks. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.